to that provides timber receipts for exactly what you need. And as long as we fight it and don't actually support that, we're always going to be in this scenario unless we look for more tax dollars. They're already coming from the folks that may be on the very edge of affordability in their houses, and I don't want to keep doing that, is we put more people in a precarious position because we keep taxing everybody. So as long as we have a resource that we can capitalize on and use the resource for funding sheriff patrols, which we can all agree that's a great thing, is that we should be trying to promote that rather than squash it in one way or another. And Senator Wyden has very carefully crafted with Senator Merkley the bill that they have that creates an endowment at the federal level that would guarantee funding on a permanent basis. If we could all get behind that, it's not going to solve the whole problem, but certainly it adds to the amount of resources that we have at our disposal to spend on public safety that we want and to have sheriff. Because I remember when they patrolled in Springfield, and I went, what the heck, we have Springfield police, but the sheriff patrols were in Springfield because there were enough patrols to go around. So I want us not to forget that we have access to that, and the sustainable yields are nowhere near clear-cutting everything. They are just simply sustainable yields, and as long as our senators are working hard to make that a reality, I think we should support it. Our lobbyists are coming. We go back to DC every year, and I think we should be able to support that so that we can have our patrols. It can affect Beaver and Hunsaker. It can affect all of the places where we are dependent on county patrols to help us be safe. So I just, always looking at where the heck we can make it a better situation for all of us.
Thank you. Councilor?
So this is, I've been thinking about that. I've had time to think about some of those things that you mentioned. And as a possible short-term solution, they may have already been explored. And I know that there's mutual aid agreements, but perhaps through separate IGAs through the different agencies, that when you come up and you have projects such as, assign a project code to something that's going to cost you over time, such as the country fair or specific events, etc., that you could subscribe to assistance from other outside agencies such as Springfield or Eugene PD, etc., through those IGAs to back pay them through those project funds, and to at least make that available, overtime available for those agencies, where those officers can sign up for that overtime while they're not working a regular shift, and cover the costs for the cities or those agencies, so that way at least those police services are provided during those events to protect the public in general. Has that been explored?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I worked the Friday night of Oregon Country Fair this year. I've only missed 1 year of not working a shift during the Oregon Country Fair. And we had 2 Springfield motor officers out there and a Eugene motor officer. And they were using traffic safety grant dollars also that the cities, their chain of command allowed them to use those grant dollars for traffic safety in support of us and that mission out there. It was fantastic. We used to have a motors program, which particularly regarding Oregon Country Fair, where you're mixing vehicles and pedestrians on a county roadway. The motor officers are so much more able to effectively interact, and so it was fantastic to have the support from the cities. And so, yeah, we have and continue to.
Okay, any other comments? Thank you very much. It was very informative and helpful. We appreciate you joining us today. And next up, May is Bike Month. We'll report on yes. Welcome.
My name is Shane Rhodes, and I'm with the City of Eugene in Public Works Transportation Planning, and we're here today to talk a little bit about and share what we did this past year with May is Bike Month, and a little bit about potentials for the future as well.
And I'm Emma Newman, City of Springfield, so we partnered for a number of years on this effort. Realized I didn't add Shane to the front slide because we were supposed to present initially in July, and then your meetings were canceled. So here we are in September giving you an update about May. So thank you for having us.
Very good. Great. So May is Bike Month has a long history around the country. It's been going since 1956, celebrated with the League of American Bicyclists and other organizations and communities around the country holding different events. In our region, we have a long history of different types of bike events, from Human Powered Fridays, Business Commute Challenge, Walking Bike to School Day, lots of different events that have been happening for decades. We have a long history of biking in our community in general, but this specific month of May is Bike Month, we've been doing since 2014. And the real effort for this month has been to gather all the partners that were already doing some really great events, and then do a co-marketing, co-branded, one big push, and get everyone involved on the same page, and really encourage a lot of other community members to get involved and to be engaged with this project as well. So some of this work started with the growth of our Safe Routes to School programs and a lot of events that were happening at different schools with Walking Bike to School challenges and Walking Bike to School days. And so our partners range from the school districts, the City of Eugene, City of Springfield, LTE Point-to-Point Solutions, with the addition of Peace Health Rides last year in Eugene. They've also become a great partner, University of Oregon and their transportation department and their bike program as well, and Willamette Lane and local advocacy organizations like Gears and Best that have been doing different projects, all to encourage people to try out biking if they haven't tried riding, to encourage those who are already riding to celebrate that, and to get their friends and family and co-workers engaged and involved to ride more often as well. This past year we started a co-branded site called We Bike Lane for everyone to use as a common calendar for all the different events that are happening throughout the region. People can submit events that they're holding, whether it's an education class or a ride or some free event. They can put that on the calendar and it shows up automatically, and so there's one go-to source for all the great events that are going on during that month. And so we had almost at least one event a day, and over about 50 events that happened throughout that month.
So briefly, I'd like to touch on how this aligns with the policy goals, both at the state level, regional level, as well as some of the more specific programs we have in our area. So the transportation planning rule has various policy elements that talk about reducing single occupancy vehicle trips, and promoting biking in our area definitely helps with that. You're familiar as a body with the Regional Transportation Plan and the Regional Transportation Options Plan within that, so this aligns. The City Transportation System plans. As Shane touched on, Safe Routes to School has the Walk and Roll Challenge in May, which is convenient timing to cross-promote things happening in the schools, things happening through employers, things happening in the broader community. This year, I had someone from a local church in Springfield approach me and say, hey, we're doing this bike-related thing. Can you promote our flyer and let people know about this barbecue and bike event we're having over at church? Come on out. So you never know what might bubble up from just community organizations or an individual saying, I have an idea, I want to do it. Let's get it on the calendar and make it happen. And then Point to Point has been a great partner with the Business Commute Challenge that specifically is focusing on the employer piece of things during the same month. So a few highlights from this year. In 2019, both mayors did proclamations at city council meetings about Bike Months, highlighting some of the things that have recently happened. This year in Springfield, the mayor spoke about the Springfield Museum exhibit, which was kind of a one-off special event here in Springfield, where throughout the whole month of May and into June, there was an exhibit around biking in Springfield and the history of biking here. There was an individual who donated or loaned us a number of his bicycles from a personal collection that are really, really cool. We pulled out some bike license registration information from the archives about how people used to register their bikes with the Springfield Police Department. It's amazing what you find when you have an event around biking. The Art Walk in Eugene kicked off the whole month of activities. There were month-long promotions at various businesses that would say, you know, you get $1 off if you ride your bike to our business, if it's a restaurant, those sorts of things. The Springfield Library already does story times, but they were a great partner. They joined in a huge way this year to theme the story times around biking. So there were a series of different story times that had biking incorporated. They also ran a bike repair clinic down here in the City Hall Plaza. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and then the Eugene Active Transportation Committee this year worked across the region to register more businesses as being bike-friendly through the Travel Oregon program. So that's a program that's really trying to help promote businesses that are bike-friendly, encourage them to be more bike-friendly, whether it's installing a bike rack, offering free water to fill up water bottles, the types of services that people touring through our community by bicycle would want to be able to stop in for a snack, a quick repair, a restroom, those sorts of things. And we had great success with getting a number of new businesses recognized, just distributed the final signs that we were able to help purchase recently to those businesses. So you'll see more of those signs up in the right corner popping up with the businesses and what they offer in the community. Safe Routes to School has the challenge, and their numbers were, I think, the highest they have been this past year. It was really impressive how much participation there was. City of Springfield has put on Wheels by the Willamette, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then, you know, there were a number of other events. As Shane said, it's probably well over 50. We start out the month, and then people continue to add events throughout. And one of the important pieces is there's these events happening during May, but it's an opportunity to plug in, get to know about maybe a monthly bike ride that's happening, and then people can start building community and connecting to resources that go all around the whole calendar year instead of just the month of May. So specifically this year, we had some great media coverage. The NBC 16 actually live streamed the Wheels by the Willamette event on TV. That was a first for us. We also had a May is Bike Month story out on the North Bank Path there on the right. That was on the front cover of the Register Guard. And there were numerous social media, newsletter, staff emails, newsletter, other e-newsletters that go out beyond your more traditional media hits that we show here.
Yeah, so looking forward, we're excited to expand May is Bike Month and gather more partners, more communities besides just Eugene and Springfield, but look throughout, because now it's We Bike Lane, and we hope to involve communities throughout Lane County and encourage them to hold some events. I know that Oregon just had some interest. I've heard some rumblings, and we want to grow programs that we're already doing, but also encourage more organizations and community members to host their own events and really make May a strong month for kicking off that spring and summer riding. And so the number of events that we do, encouraging other people to hold those, but then also grow the numbers in the events that we are holding. And one of those that I know will be focused on in Eugene is Springfield started their bicycle-friendly business workshop, and we this past year tagged on and held a separate event, so we had 2 different events going on for businesses. And we had a really great response from businesses, not only to apply to be a bicycle-friendly business, but who wanted to know what they could do even if they didn't go through the application process, if they weren't a sort of tourist or front-facing business, if they were just an organization that had employees, what they could do to encourage people to ride more often. And so being able to connect with those businesses and give those resources was a great tool beyond just the encouragement aspect of holding an event like that. So we want to reach more of those connections with businesses, and then encouraging more new riders, really working on this idea of the bike buddy, and if you have a friend who hasn't tried riding, coming out to these events is a great time to feel that encouragement. The bottom left corner picture there is a diversity ride that was held in Eugene and really brought out some newer riders who might not have come out before, and, along with experienced riders who ridden so much they knew how to haul their dog. And so we're very excited for that. And I think that one of the pieces is also that in both the Safe Routes to School world and in our Walk and Roll Challenge and Business Commute Challenge, is that in a way we're over-challenged in our region. We have a lot of events that happen, and so this is a way to consolidate them in May. But then we also do a lot in October. We have the Get There challenges coming up, and that's something that happens statewide. And so it's a way for us to sort of focus our marketing and our outreach efforts into really consolidated events.
Briefly, I'll just share a personal favorite story from this year. So we were out at the Wheels by the Willamette event on the North Bank Path, and there was Peace Health Rides there demoing bikes. There were bike safety checks. The city was partnering with Safe Routes to School doing bike blended smoothies. There was a lot going on, snacks and gifts and all sorts of safety information. And this lady rolls up pushing her bike. She's walking and she's got a flat. And here it is, Friday afternoon, she's going home, looking forward to the weekend, and she's thinking, oh, I need to go find a bike shop tomorrow, haul my bike into the shop, figure out how to repair this flat. And then she came upon the event, walked up and said, this made my day. Because her bike was being repaired over here, she was getting free snacks, and then she was entering to win prizes over here, able to do a cornhole toss with the Peace Health bikes, and just having a wonderful time connecting with people, getting it taken care of. She got home by 5:30 on a Friday night, didn't have to deal with that errand, and she could actually ride her bike the next day instead of dealing with the repair. So that was a highlight for me. With that, I will open up for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much. Very, it's not really an update anymore, but it's a briefing. Thank you.
Planning.
We're getting
Planning.
ready.
We're anticipating, we could say we're anticipating the October events, right? We're way ahead. We're way ahead. Any other comments? I'll just have to say that I'm not a confident biker, and so I continually say and have said to Shane, can't you just regard me as the walking mayor? Do I have to be the biking mayor? And you actually even got me on a Peace Health Rides bike during May, so it was a triumph. I survived.
That alone.
Thank you very much for your report and for your work. Okay, I'm just going to give everyone a little time check. We have 10 minutes for follow-up next steps, and then hopefully we'll be right on time for the Cable Commission meeting. So we'll run through this. ODOT, oh wait, have I skipped the legislative update? No, it's coming. Okay. ODOT update, yes, please.
I guess our big news, our most current big news is that we've let the contract for the Beltline at Delta interchange improvements. I'm really excited about that. We have an apparent low bidder, so, which means we're going through all the machinations of checking the numbers and such. So hopefully we will have a notice to proceed in early October. So look forward to more construction out there. So that's our big news right now.
Great.
I know, short-term pain, long-term gain, right?
Right.
Keep
Thank
saying
you.
that over and over again.
Yes, and go on vacation.
All there is the short term.
Springfield Main Street update, anybody to speak
Yes,
with
that's
that?
me.
Yes,
Thank
okay,
you,
good.
Mayor. Project's on schedule. We're in the process of identifying and evaluating potential solutions, and we've expanded the scope of the project slightly to include more detailed analysis of the roundabouts. LTD is contributing some funding for that. We appreciate that. We've notified property owners of the key principles and methodology that we've developed for the project that's required by state statute, this so-called Senate Bill 408 Access Management Rule. We'll be hosting a second online open house event late in November that will extend through January. And the next city council briefing is on November 12th.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next up is a legislative update.
I'll just briefly mention three things. First of all, in your packet, I put in the ODOT transportation legislative summary and referenced in the cover memo a couple of the resources if you want to go beyond that summary. So I'm not going to talk about the legislation itself, given the time frame we have for today's meeting. Second thing is, I will mention, if you haven't heard, that there has been introduced in the U.S. Congress a transportation reauthorization bill. Good news is it would reauthorize the MPO funding and the work that we do. It would reauthorize FHWA highway funding. Bad news is it's only a reauthorization for the highway side of things. It doesn't include transit, it doesn't include rail or Amtrak, it doesn't include aviation and other things. And while I'm optimistic, although it's hard to predict these days, but I'm optimistic Congress will probably pass this reauthorization more quickly than they have in past reauthorizations on the highway side, given a fairly bipartisan support. It's unfortunate that there could be a little bit more of a battle and a drawn-out timeline for getting reauthorization for transit and rail and other things like that. But we're keeping an eye on that bill, and we'll bring you an update if it moves forward. Third thing I'll mention really is a result of legislation, which just if you hadn't heard, LCOG was awarded the funding for the 2 transit routes that we applied for, and as of yesterday, I guess, we're operating the Florence to Yachats route, and we got the funding for the Florence to Eugene transit route. Pretty big deal there. We're putting together the pieces. We hope to have that running by January or February.
Wow, that's great. Great, thank you. Any other comments, additions, questions? All right, well, thank you. Lane Act update?
Yes, the next meeting is next Wednesday, September 11th. The meeting will be in Florence. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've had a special meeting out in Florence. We do have an abbreviated agenda. We will be talking about regional priorities and providing an update on the ODOT director search. But a big part of the program will be Florence, talking about its public facilities, new things that are happening in Florence. They're especially proud of the new streetscaping on US 101, an ODOT project, but we've been collaborating carefully with the city on that, and they've actually contributed some funding. That's next Wednesday.
Okay, great. OMPOC.
2 things I'll mention about OMPOC. The next meeting is October 11th. Rogue Valley area, I believe it's going to be Central Point, but that is coming up soon. The other thing I want to mention is that at the last meeting, at the, it was end of August? Early August. July.
End of July, July 30th.
Okay, I should have just said last
Summer,
meeting.
it's flown. Summer.
Last meeting, whenever it was, doesn't matter. OMPOC basically gave staff direction, which OMPOC staff's on, to start planning for an OMPOC event, a statewide event open to more than just OMPOC. We're targeting November of 2020 for that event. We've done this a couple of times before as OMPOC. But the reason I want to mention it today is because week after next, you should all be getting a survey from Kelly. And that's going to go to all of the MPO members, not just the OMPOC representatives, but all of the MPO board members throughout Oregon, asking for ideas around the topic for the event. At the last meeting, OMPOC discussed some possibilities. They talked about equity. They talked about climate change. They talked about various things that could be the focus of an event, but we received direction to send out a survey to all of the MPO board members, so you should be seeing that again week after next.
Okay, great. And MTIP?
Again, there's a summary of all of the administrative amendments that your advisory committee has processed and passed over the past couple of months, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Great. And are there any questions? Any comments about next steps, any items for the agenda? Commissioner?
Just that the county is working on a climate action plan, and that at some point, not building on the agenda for next month, but at some point, when the county gets, and is Mr. Mr. Hurley had to leave, but at some point, perhaps Dan Hurley, Lane County Public Works Director, or someone would come and talk about what the county's doing in the whole climate change arena.
Great. Okay.
Transportation being one of the most significant parts of adding carbon to the atmosphere.
Right, absolutely. Any other items, comments about the future agenda? Yes, Kate.
I would just want to put out there that it would be great for LTD to do an update on transit tomorrow, as we have moved even more forward with it on our board level, just so that this body can continue to remain apprised of what we're working on. It's a large system-wide changes,
Right,
so.
right. Thank you. That would be, I think, very helpful. Great. Any others? Okay, I think, congratulations, 4 minutes early. We'll close the MPC meeting and opening a meeting of the Metropolitan Cable Commission.
Some of the transportation people don't
Don't forget your surveys.
Oh, yes, thank you for saying, I was going to say that.
cities and counties, I'll fill that out. For your friends.
So,
Yeah, I don't even need to be, yeah, we can.
All right, are you going back to the shop?
No, I have to pick a restaurant today. Oh, can't be a model. But you're fine.
You'll get a survey.
We're all taking turns.
So now, where are the cable cars gonna be going?
Are they electric?
Are they electric? Will LTD be running these cable cars?
Right.
Or will Elcog have the contract?
I see. Are you enjoying this work now after 8 full months?
Okay, ready for the Cable Commission? Everyone made the transition successfully to the next
Yeah, good.
big issue? Thank you, and welcome. Do you want to just introduce
Yes.
yourself and?
So my name's Ann Davies. I am an employee at LCOG. I'm here as the Cable Commission staff person. So we also have an audience full of cable people behind me who are the jurisdictions staff also. So the Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County staff that I've been working with for the last couple of years, dealing with franchise renewal and audit or fee review for the franchise that the 3 jurisdictions have with Comcast. We also have a representative of Comcast here, Sherry Ecker, if you wanted to raise your hand, came today to observe. She's been working with Tim Goodman, who is the contact that we've been having while we've been working on the renewal. He's busy, and Sherry came down because she's going to start working on this franchise with Tim and wanted to see the MPC or the Cable Commission in action. I wrote up a memo that's intended to give you a broad overview and an update on some of the things that are happening at the federal level with an FCC order that recently came out. I know some of the people here are newer and may not live and breathe franchises, but as some of the more relatively new people will tell you, you just have to jump in and get your feet wet and learn as you go. I'm not going to kind of give the whole history of how franchises work, but as I talk, please feel free to ask questions. We have half an hour today. Feeling kind of greedy with the time here. So I just want to give a quick recap, ask any questions as we go, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time at the end to kind of brainstorm and ask more specific questions. And staff's here also to answer specific questions from the different jurisdictions. So in the last 2 years or so, we've been working with Comcast on a free review and a renewal of the existing franchise. The franchise that we had, I think, expired originally in 2019. So those were kind of two separate avenues that we were taking. The fee review has been resolved. So last spring, the Cable Commission finally determined on the dollar figures that Comcast was going to pay to the different jurisdictions on what we argued were unpaid franchise fees. So that's been resolved. There's been settlement agreements signed by all the jurisdictions, and that Comcast has actually sent the checks to the jurisdictions. So that's behind us. We still have the renewal. What we did last spring is we extended the deadline on the current franchise to next summer. Just want to remind you where we were of that. So it's June something of 2020 is when the franchise is still good for. And the idea was that we would get together with Comcast and continue to negotiate. There was one issue, sticking point, that we just couldn't come to agreement on. The jurisdictions weren't willing to budge, and Comcast wasn't willing to budge, and so we decided to punt for a year or so. So we haven't gotten back together with Comcast to talk about that term, but in the interim, in August, there was an order that came down from the FCC that deals with cable franchising. And it kind of changes a lot of the playing field of what we've assumed had to be the case in the past. I put in the packet a summary from a national organization that summarizes the order. It's an organization that helps local governments deal with these types of issues, and they're a great resource, and they, the second an order is issued, they've got a 5-page summary that they send out to all the different members, cities and counties around the country. So I've added that. Some of it's a little wonky, because they do, as I say, live and breathe this stuff, and so they have certain terms that they just assume everybody knows, and they don't necessarily. So if you read through that and you have any specific questions, I and the other staff people here to answer when those come up. So the order, the FCC order is very lengthy. I don't particularly advise any of you sitting down to read it because it'll make your head hurt. There are lots of issues involved. One of them is what's called the mixed use issue, that it's not something we want to talk about today, but it's something that the city of Eugene has been intimately involved with Comcast in the past. The city of Eugene has actually already filed an appeal of the order with regard to that issue, the mixed use issue, which is cable companies providing services that aren't generally cable services, the internet and other things like that. So that's not what we're going to talk about today, but I wanted you to know that the city of Eugene has already appealed this order with the attempt to try to get the litigation to happen in the Ninth Circuit. So the two issues that I do want to talk about are the issue dealing with the gratis services. In our franchise, there's a provision that says that Comcast will provide free cable service to government buildings. And we've taken them up on that. And so there's free service to city halls, schools, police stations, fire stations throughout the metro area. And that's been a great service that we've taken advantage of and have not been charged for. So the order, the FCC order, has made it clear that these gratis, what we call gratis services, are no longer really free. And that is because the value of those services are going to come off of the franchise fees that we collect from Comcast. And that is a 5% cap on their revenues that they get on cable services in each city and county. So the gratis services to the public buildings are going to be taken off of the franchise fees. The other issue is the PEG, the public education and government channels, that the order did not make a final decision on. They said, we don't know what we're going to do with those, whether those are gratis services, and that we're going to value those the same way we do these other things. But so that's in the future. I only put that in the memo because it's in the next year. Less than the next year, we're going to be dealing with that. So I wanted you to kind of have a heads up that that's in the order. They haven't specifically ruled that we need to deal with it yet, but within the next year we will be. So with regard to the gratis services, the The FCC order goes into effect September 26th, which is why we are coming to you now instead of October. We're not asking you to make any decisions or take any action today, but we needed you to know what the staff is doing in order to prepare the jurisdiction and the Cable Commission to do whatever we need to do around this. So what the staff has done is the staff that I'm working with have reached out to their staffs in the city. So the City of Eugene's reached out to internal staff at the City of Eugene, and Springfield and Lane County have done the same. We've reached out because the government buildings have these cable services, so there's a way that the cable services come into each building, but then there are cable boxes, numerous cable boxes in many of those public buildings. And so these services and the cable boxes are part of what allows Comcast to provide these cable services to the public buildings. And right now they're free. As far as I'm aware, none of the cities or the county really have an assessment of all those different items, like what building has what service, how many boxes there are. So we reached out to Comcast to say, what are you thinking these are worth? We haven't gotten from them numbers of buildings, which buildings have that service, and how many boxes or TVs and that, but they've given us the numbers, and that's in the packet that I gave you, that they're looking at. It's an estimate, and they've acknowledged that it's an estimate. We don't have a whole lot of background where those numbers are coming from, and we're hoping to get more of that background information from Comcast. But in the next month or so, staff is going to continue to reach out to the city departments and the county departments, as well as the schools. And I just want to kind of talk about the schools a little bit, because they're independent organizations that have a different pocket of money than the cities do. So it's kind of an awkward situation because they're getting those free services also. And if we were to tell Comcast we don't want any of those free services anymore, then we would just stop doing it. But if it's determined that the city wants to continue to provide those services, then we need to figure out which of those services are going to be provided, which aren't, who's going to pay for it. And with the schools, because there's a different pocket of money, we're going to have to negotiate with with the school districts on what they are continuing to want and what they're not. To make it a little bit easier, just so you know that the Springfield and Eugene, at least for now, their staff has told me that they're fine with me letting you know that they're leaning toward, we don't want to pay for these services. If they're not going to be free, we don't want them. And part of the reason is just the way technology's moving. A lot of the buildings don't really use these cable services. A lot are going to internet. The cable services are still available, and my understanding is, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of times they're used for weather, like in emergency situations. People will turn on the TV to watch the weather. And there are just other ways of getting that information. So that's going to be kind of a conversation that the electeds and the cities, the management of the cities and the county will have to be figuring out in the next month or so. And the reason I say in the next month is because, again, the order is going to be effective on September 26th, and we just don't know what Comcast has in mind for that date, whether that's a date when they're going to start charging for the services that are already being provided if we haven't told them we don't want them. And so that's kind of where we are. My hope is that we will be coming to you again in October, because this is just moving so fast. And we'll need to update you again in October. And it may be that there is an action that we ask you to take. And the action that you possibly could take would be basically making a motion to say, we don't want any of these, after having talked to your electeds. And the reason that you might be able to do that is that in most situations, the franchise themselves, the franchises that cities have with Comcast and the charters, are probably going to have to get renegotiated, because the franchises themselves say these services will be provided to these buildings. The franchise that we have, and that there's language that I provided you in that extra sheet today that wasn't in the packet, allows the Planning Commission to say, without changing the franchise itself, we don't want those services. They're the ones who can say, these are the services we want, these are the services we don't want. And so we think that that is something that this cable commission can do that probably a lot of other cable commissions can't do around the country, is make that call without changing the franchise itself. Yes, please.
Christina Kras, I'm the Assistant City Attorney from Springfield. When Ann said that we're leaning towards saying we don't want the services, we're saying we wouldn't want the services as in kind under the franchise. If individual departments or fire stations, libraries, schools wanted cable services, they would just go direct to Comcast the same way that a business owner or homeowner or any other customer would. So there would still be an option to get those cable services, we just wouldn't go through this process of deducting out of our franchise fees.
Got it.
Lucy,
Yeah, go for it.
quick question. You said we don't really have an inventory to know how many of these cable boxes or TVs are being used by different components of public sector? Is that,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay.
I mean,
And-
the city of Eugene, I think, has been working on getting an inventory of exactly what that is.
And in the event that we eventually do get a list, or at least some semblance of a list, and we find out, well, maybe emergency services would have a cable. Maybe fire station, or at least some fire stations, or sheriff's office, or whatever. And people that deal with emergencies might wanna have that. And then maybe like bigwigs, I guess, city managers or people that are in charge of all of that, maybe they would be in that. But you're saying we would just cancel the free part of the agreement, and we wouldn't do that. We would just pay for it, and that would come out of their budget, in the way any other commercial or residential purchaser would.
That's, I think, what Christina was trying to clarify, is that's one of the options of what could happen.
What do you think's best, though? What do you think's a good way
Well,
to
I think
do
that's
this?
what we're going to be trying to determine in the next month and then present to you in October, unless anyone's willing to say that. I think we're still researching and trying to figure it out. And so when I said that I think that at least the city of Eugene and the city of Springfield are leaning toward, like you said, if the police needs it and if the fire needs it, maybe we yank them all and whoever needs it purchases it out of their own budget. And it's not part of the franchise.
So, what I would say is, I don't know.
Go ahead.
What I would say is that either way, the FCC order allows Comcast to essentially set the value of the free services at whatever market rate is. So we don't anticipate there being any cost savings in terms of like getting it for cheaper if it's part of our franchise. And so if we have each department or building or whatever contract on their own for those services, it's probably the same cost. But it's administratively potentially simpler because you're not having to account for those as coming out of franchise payments, which could be difficult to track for staff and could have implications for later audits. It's much more straightforward, I think, to just pay an invoice or an account the way that other customers do. And then it also provides more flexibility to the department or building who's receiving it on changing what they want to receive, because they would do that the same way any other customer would, rather than having to come back to the cable commission and request adjustments that way.
Round numbers, how much do the 3 jurisdictions get each year?
That's not my expertise.
Pam
Other-
might know more.
No. Yeah.
Just the monetary franchise fees?
Yeah, how much do the city of Eugene get, Lane County, city of Springfield?
That goes to the general fund in the
Yeah.
right-of-way use fee
Yeah.
for the 5% cable TV?
It's about 2 million.
About, yeah, a little over
For
2
the
million a year
That's for city of Eugene.
for city of Eugene.
What about Springfield and Lane County?
700,000 roughly for Springfield.
About
450,000 for Lane County.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
After,
Oh, no, go
Mayor,
ahead.
Commissioner?
please.
Mayor,
So, in our streaming world, in our world of Wi-Fi capabilities and what you can pick up via the internet, it really is less and less important to have a strictly cable system for getting, unless you've got, I don't know, I think you can probably stream Game of Thrones or whatever, anyway, it's HBO, anyway. But you don't have, I'm just using probably the one that is, had a huge viewership.
No.
Anyway,
I can relate to this, Joe, please.
yeah, so.
It's Game of Thrones.
Oh my Lord, you've been under a rock. Anyway, but the point is that so much is available. You don't have to have cable the way we used to have cable, where that was our source of information or weather or whatever, that pretty much everything you can get via another method. So I'm gonna say that we had a conversation and it seemed like that it made sense to take a look at the other, how else people get all of their information and what would be useful for departments, and if they want to have a subscription, great. But otherwise, to continue and then have basically be charged for the fact that, we're, it's not free anymore, is not worth it.
Yeah.
Commissioner?
No, this is for clarification for me. I absolutely concur with what I heard, but I once had the opportunity to be quite familiar with the Comcast corporate culture, at least two pieces of it, their real estate division and their sustainability efforts. And that was in Los Angeles, where we audited and did work on 2 of their facilities. And so, understanding their culture as I do, I'm guessing that this FCC order will increase their revenue?
Well, yeah, that's,
Would have asked for it.
that's the idea. And very interesting point that I'll just throw out there is that some of the experts have identified a provision that arguably could require them to pass through the savings onto the subscribers.
Really?
Yeah,
And that's to be determined?
yeah. That's not even mentioned in the order, but
Okay.
people have talking about that.
That's fascinating. And as it relates to rates, is there any sort of accountability in the company's determination of what market rates are in an environment where they have the franchise?
Yeah, that's, again, a big topic of debate is what's market value and how's it going to be determined? And I believe that the numbers that are in the chart right now are based on a rate that is a commercial rate. The commercial rate's higher than a residential rate.
Right.
But they do have existing rates that at least are some sideboards to determining what that market value is.
And last question, and thank you very much, Chair. It feels to me in your presentation that this is happening very quickly. And it feels, my sense is it's happening faster than on the ground people are ready to really thoughtfully respond to.
Yeah.
What is your anticipation of the time frame moving forward for some of these decisions and clarifications?
So I'll give you the order. I mean, the order is vague in a lot of ways. It doesn't specifically require the cable companies to give notice of, what they're going to be charging. So we actually got these numbers because we reached out to Comcast. The order does not require a cable company to provide that information or to seek to start negotiations with local governments. But there is a anticipation, I think I had in my memo, kind of a suggestion in the order that says the cable companies and the local governments will negotiate what this is going to look like, so that presumably there would be an opportunity for the local governments to say, actually, we don't want these services. So the timeline is, in the order, is a suggestion of a reasonable amount of time to conduct those negotiations is 120 days.
Can I ask one last? I'm sorry.
Go for it. No, go for it.
So, this is occurring all over the country. Are there networks now forming of municipal governments and other entities so that they can compare how their negotiations are going and what best negotiation practices and outcomes might be for the public interest?
Yeah, this is actually an area where the local governments work really well together. There's an organization called NATOA, National Association of Technology Advisors, Officers or something. And they have a big conference that a lot of us are going to in 2 weeks. And they have calls.
So you're on it.
Yeah, and Pam's been on it forever, and knows everybody and knows all the issues, but yeah, really, really, closely connected in that regard.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know you went over this, and it's probably in the packet, just a clarification about the impact on the public schools.
So the public schools are, in the franchise, it says Comcast, you as part of this franchise will also provide these free services to public schools. And so my understanding is that almost all the schools within this area, whether it's Springfield, Eugene, or Lane County, do have some of those free services or have availed themselves of those free services in the past. So what we've been doing is reaching out to the schools and saying, you get these services for free, explaining what the order says to them and explaining that probably Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County aren't going to decide to pay for them for the schools. So we may be in a situation where it will be up to you to decide whether you want to keep those services and pay for them, or whether you just don't want to have them. So we're reaching outside of this, the cities and the county are reaching outside their own organizations to try to touch base with the schools.
Right, so that's gnarlier.
Yeah, that's definitely
That's
gnarlier.
gnarlier, because they're counting on that service, and now it's a budget item for
Right.
them.
And in the county, which I didn't even realize until yesterday or today when Christine Moody told me, is the county is dealing with, 2 handfuls of districts.
Right.
The city just has, 2 districts, but the county has all these different tiny little districts that they don't even know who to reach out to yet.
And so, in your conversations with the school districts, did they have the same sort of sense about the trajectory of technology, that they're more likely to lean on internet in the future anyway, and that the loss of the cable may not be worth the money to them?
I have not had conversations with the school districts, and I don't know if the staff can answer that or wants to answer that.
In Eugene, my bid outreach, and unless Mike's heard differently, with Bethel and 4J, the telecom staff say, the classrooms have moved to the internet for the most part. However, the figure that you see here speaks otherwise.
Right.
So it may be that the schools have boxes but never turn on the TVs.
Right.
Or they have the boxes, and that's what Comcast is using to develop a 1 box equals a TV equals X dollars a month, even if the TV's never turned on.
Right.
So that's what we're in the fact-finding
Okay.
phase right now.
Right. So the schools, they've had it, and it's been free, so why bother even thinking about it? They may just say, oh, yeah, actually, we don't ever use it. But 120 days, I mean, it feels like a quick turnaround for the schools even to begin to think that through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why we've been, as soon
Yeah.
as this order came about, we started reaching
Right.
out and.
Right. Right. Well, yes.
One, what do you think of the idea of having the jurisdictions ask their people in charge of boxes to just turn everybody's box off and see who complains? So that, like, if you turned mine off, I wouldn't complain.
Because you wouldn't know it got turned off.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I used to watch it all the time, okay? I don't do it anymore. Got other ways to get the info. So if Christine or some other important person at the county sent out an edict to Comcast to turn everybody's box off, and we might get 20 people out of 300 to complain,
Yeah.
but we could turn theirs back on.
Yeah.
And then second thing is, can we write a letter, can you guys write a letter for consideration at our next meeting that says, gosh, we're so happy to implement this FCC order. We're on it. We're either gonna take the free service that comes out of our hide, or we're gonna pay for it. We haven't decided, or maybe by then we will have decided, but now it's gonna save so much money. We want that money to go back to the ratepayers. We are so happy that this economy can happen, and so we want Congress or FCC or somebody, you guys can fill in the blanks here. We want to make sure that that happens, and we're just one of the million cable commissions out here in America, but, we're going along with it, but by the way, since you haven't addressed where the money's gonna go, we'd like to give you suggestion. Should go back to the ratepayer.
So a letter from the Cable Commission?
Yeah, signed by our illustrious chair, if the commission agrees.
If the commission agrees, I'm sure we can draft
Yeah,
something
and who
up.
would that go to? Would that go to Congress or FCC, or who has the authority to make that
Well,
decision?
so in the conversations that we've been having online, the recommendation really is to reach out to your Congress. The FCC is, blind ears, deaf ears at this point.
Yeah.
But they have been recommending to reach out to the representatives.
And we have a congressional delegation that we could write to, and our senators and congressmen can give it due consideration, whatever that is, but.
So my only thought in that, I'm kind of looking at Pam as well, is thinking that if the city of Eugene has already filed an appeal to the FCC order, I don't know how that works if we also write a letter saying, or maybe we write a letter saying, well, if it stands, this is what I'm just not exactly sure whether that's too many.
She was looking to you on
Yeah,
that.
just.
Given that the Eugene has already appealed the order, whether it makes
Whether
sense for the Cable Commission to continue to write a letter like that.
Well, sure, because during litigation, you can still implore
Right.
them, to use the savings or in some way, just as we're commenting on other proceedings of theirs where we think that they overstepped their authority. So we're appealing the small cell order.
Right.
We're appealing this order along with cities across the US because we feel they've overstepped their authority. And, but in the meantime, because the order takes effect September 26th, we have reason to believe that on September 27th, they're going to take this out as a franchise fee
Right.
offset, no matter what we
Fair enough.
say.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
unless we come to some decision
Right.
as a commission to rescind the original request to turn on the
Right.
service.
Okay. So is there interest in a letter from the commission to the FCC on this issue? I get a head nod or a comment? Yeah.
Well,
That's all.
I don't disagree with the letter, but I think that it may be a little bit cart before the horse, just a little, where I think it deserves inquiry to the cable service provider, asking them up front if this is, if this is the case, or if you're planning on doing this, where are those funds going to be going? And then but the answer could be that we plan on returning it to the ratepayers, and it's like, okay, well then, that's cool, we got it in writing, but if they say, well, that's gonna be retained for profits, then it's like, okay, well then we should say what we should wanna say on the letter. A little bit of checking, it seems like, a little bit of homework is deserved.
Well, it sounds like they're gonna get the money. Sounds like they're gonna get the money.
Well, what do you mean they're gonna get?
They're gonna get the money either from us out of our franchise fee, or they're gonna get the money from us to pay for whatever cable TV services we use.
Yeah, if the order stands and.
Right. So they're gonna get more money. What are they gonna do with it? Well, they're probably gonna keep it, but I agree, if we can write a letter saying, gosh, we just figured out how much money you guys are gonna get off of this, so, give it to our ratepayers. Let us know if you're gonna do that. If they do that in 30 days, we don't need to write the letter. But if they don't, we better tell our congressional delegation that they're keeping the money, and they've been keeping the money since September 27th.
And we can inform the delegation,
Right.
because we asked them.
And we can, and that adds to the point that the benefit of slowing it down and asking them.
Right.
So that it's either you tell us, or we're assuming you're keeping it.
Take the direction, I'll take direction from the commission.
And are there other jurisdictions that are doing this, other cable commissions?
Yeah, I don't know whether, I'm sure there are letters coming from cable commissions and mayors and different officials in
Yeah.
capacities.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Just a thought. If very quickly, like days, you have examples of letters to this effect that have come from other cable commissions, I would like to see them.
Yeah.
And then it would make sense, I would suggest more the tone of Mr. Pictionary than the tone of Mr. Sorensen,
We want it back.
but a letter of inquiry, a polite letter of inquiry to the company, and then with a time frame that we would appreciate knowing by, and then be prepared based on that to either write a letter or not. I think that would be a process that would give us the most information and hopefully the most impact.
And I would just say that I'm fine with all these suggestions. I would just add that since there are other people ahead of us that are probably doing this already, either asking their cable provider what's gonna happen to the money, or people that are more on the saber rattling end of give it back now, and threatening to sue them for failing to give it back now, whenever now begins, September 27th. There's also the congressional side of it, which is asking Congress to step in and clarify that they have to do that. So I think there's a number of different things, and what a great timing you guys are going to this conference and can scarf up all these different examples of letters, both hot-tempered and polite and direct and vague or whatever, and bring your recommendation to our next meeting.
Scarf up?
Scarf up. That's a good verb, isn't it? Isn't it a good verb?
Yes, Mayor.
So where did the numbers come from?
Comcast.
They gave us numbers, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we reached out and asked, because we knew we were coming here and we wanted to have some idea of what we were looking at as far as the
But
numbers.
it's not real, it's not money, really, right now.
Not right now. It
Yeah.
could be as soon as the 27th, though.
Because they're not paying the franchise against it. Yes?
Yeah, they're not, right now, what they do is we get 5% of their
Right,
revenues.
Yeah,
and they
so
provide-
I'm trying to think, okay, where's the money really, and will they alter their numbers? So if they want to, if we expect them to give it back to the ratepayers, that they'll go, didn't do that math right, and refigure it.
Yeah.
Can they do that? Can they go, oh, we didn't mean 193,000, we meant.
30,000.
Well,
Yeah.
what we're anticipating, I mean, Pam and I were chatting, and what we could be anticipating is that when we get the fees, the quarterly fees at the end of the quarter, which will be some months after September 27th, the numbers will look different. I mean, that arguably could happen. I don't think it's gonna happen with us, but it could happen in other jurisdictions where they get their fees and they're lower because they've done the math themselves and they've just decided to deduct them from the franchise fees. And then you can either litigate or talk about it or argue about it at that. That could happen in some
That's what I'm trying to
places.
say, is there's two scenarios
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
of how this would get handled.
Yes, and I think, I mean, I do think, we've been in conversation with Comcast, and I like to believe that, we have a pretty good working relationship, so, we'll see,
You're
we'll see
allowed
what
to speak.
happens.
And the fact is, you can't do litigation till you prove a loss, so, right?
Hold on, Joe, no litigation yet, just a letter.
I'm already going to the next page.
So just to be clear about going forward, I'm hearing that we would like to that this is just, if you will track this information a little bit
Yes.
about inquire about whether there's already in the document, returning those savings back to the rate holder. If not, if other jurisdictions are following this pathway.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be talking to people at the
Right.
NATOA conference. Arguably, if by next month, we've figured out that nobody wants the services and no one wants the boxes, and we provide notice that we don't want this gratis service anymore, so don't take it off of our fees, then we don't have to
That's right.
figure it out.
That's right, exactly. So not to, I guess that's what I'm saying, is we're not asking you to act right away on this because things
We
may
may not
shake
need to,
out. It might not be relevant.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We might be that one jurisdiction that has the great story of how
That's
we
right.
got it resolved in a month.
That's right. Okay, well, any other final comments? Because we're a little bit over time, so thank you
Thank you.
very much. That adjourns this meeting. Thank you so much.